the co-founder and CEO of Richard Robbins International. Welcome, Richard Robbins. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Allison. It's great to be here.
And, I mean, you know a little bit about business yourself. Tell the listeners first, before we get into this, a little bit about Richard Robbins International.
Well, I primarily spend most of my time working with small businesses, actually a lot in the real estate industry. So I work with a lot of real estate agents, helping them build businesses, most of the ones that have teams. So, they're trying to grow a fairly large business. So I started when I was 24 in real estate in Peterborough. Not far from here, and then I opened a brokerage in 1988 in Markham, and then 20 years ago I opened up Richard Robbins International, and we do a lot of work all over North America, and as I said, primarily in service providers, a lot of real estate, some in the financial services, that type of business.
It's interesting. Coaching and guiding businesses has become a big industry in every kind of business. And it's something that, someone like me in the creative arts is just sort of discovering. And it seems like it's really benefited so many people because everyone can use a mentor.
Yes. It's interesting. I think where it's really come from is obviously sports. If you think about sports, they've always had a coach. And quite often what you'll see is they take a hockey team, take the Toronto Maple Leafs as an example. They don't fire the team, they fire the coach.
Yes.
And that will tell you something. What that tells you is that there's more in the team than they're getting out of the team. So the coach's responsibility is to take a talented person and get as much out of them as they possibly can. And it's been used in sports forever. Let's face it, I don't think anybody would win an Olympic gold medal without a coach, right?
Absolutely.
They're not going to win a Stanley Cup without a coach. So I think what you're seeing is that theory, if you will, is now transformed into the whole business arena. There's many CEOs now that are coached. There are executive teams that are coached. And let's face it, sometimes when you get to that level in business, especially, salespeople, where I tend to spend a lot of time, they don't have a lot of accountability. They want some help. They want some accountability. They want to learn better ways of doing things.
And I will say this, I am a terrible salesperson, and I think it can be such a challenging job. Are there some people that are just more suited to sales, or can everyone learn to be a good salesperson?
Well, there's a great quote, and I hope I don't get this wrong, but I think it was Martin Luther King, and he said that anyone can be great because anyone can serve. And my theory with sales is service. And I think a lot of people, they think, sales is you got to go in and you got to be a fast talker, you know what I mean? And that's not what I see as sales. I believe sales is one's ability to discover a need and then help that person that has that need fulfill the need. I always say that sales to me is helping somebody make a decision that is in their best interest. So I think anybody can be a great salesperson, yes, as long as they use that theory and that philosophy, because we all can help. Anyone can be great because anyone can serve.
Well, speaking of small business and giving advice, I think one of the biggest issues that is being talked about right now is here in Ontario, the mandate to raise the minimum wage. And I very much support that, but because it wasn't very long ago that I was working multiple minimum wage jobs. But at the same time, I didn't realize that it was rising all at once. And I can imagine that's been a big question mark for a lot of people.
Well, I think what we all have to remember is everything's got to be paid for somehow. Bottom line, would I like to see minimum wage up? Personally, it might go against a lot of my thinking as a business person, but on the other hand, I remember Henry Ford one time. Henry Ford gave all his employees a raise, and he gave them all a raise because he said, I want them to be able to afford to buy cars. And I thought, what an interesting theory, right? For, generally speaking, when we want to keep wages as low as we can. However, the downside of this, is that, you look at Tim Hortons as an example, and I got my wife a coffee this morning. I think it was $1.77 for a medium coffee. Well, Tim Hortons has a lot of people that are making a minimum wage. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I would suggest if minimum wage goes up as much as they're talking about, right, then what's going to happen is that coffee is not going to be $1.77 or $1.75. That coffee could be $1.95. So all we have to understand is that the business's responsibility is to be profitable. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be highly profitable at a point that's not fair. But
Right.
the reason for a business is to make money and to employ people. So the challenge is, if you keep raising the cost to the business, we're raising the cost to the consumer. And that's all the consumer has to know. Somehow, some way, somebody's paying for it.
And so when you are talking to these small business owners, how do you guide them to sort of think about potential changes like this? I mean, it's one thing to sort of, maybe be an entrepreneur and start out and come up with a budget, but then all of a sudden there are laws that can change, and all of a sudden your budget's thrown out the window, and you have to adapt. And it's like in this situation fairly quickly. How can you, or do you advise them in preparation for that?
Well, you got one or two choices, right? If you want to maintain a fair profit margin, you cut expenses, or you got to raise revenues.
Right.
They're your two choices. So you got to look at that and you say, well, maybe there's some areas that we are a little fat as a company and we could cut some expenses, because it is very easy as an organization, especially as you're growing, that you start to take on expenses sometimes that are unnecessary. Or you don't eliminate some expenses you should have eliminated. So the first place you want to look is say, is there anywhere that we can really make some rational cuts that won't have a dramatic effect on our business, where we can still provide the level of service required that we stand for? Now, if you can't do that, you have no choice. What do you have to do? You got to raise your prices, because in all fairness, the business deserves to make a fair profit. So they're your two choices, right? Cut expenses, raise revenue. I always say, get rid of fat first. If you can get rid of the fat, wonderful. If you can't, well, you got to look at what you're charging your customers, because as I said, somehow, some way, it's got to be paid for.
Right. And when these policies are made for businesses, do the government kind of liaise with small business owners? Is there a way for a dialogue to happen about these issues? Or is it just like sort of the average person, you got to write your MP and be like, you're not listening?
I don't know if there's a formal process. There could be. I'm not saying there isn't. I definitely think, the government officials, hopefully they're getting out in the field and they're talking to people and they're finding out what people are saying. And I get sometimes that they might look at big business and say, okay, well, big business, they're highly profitable, and maybe, because let's face it, if you're going to the government right now, it tends to be spending a lot of money, especially in the infrastructure. Well, everything's got to be paid for. If you start spending more money, you got to get that money from somewhere. Where my concern lies for small businesses is that if you look, even in the last quarter of last year, I believe there's about 140,000 new businesses in the last quarter of last year that started, but we lost 126,000.
Wow.
So now that's not uncommon. You're probably going to lose around 120, 130,000 a quarter. A lot of businesses don't make it, and that's okay. That's the way it should be, right? Not everybody can succeed. However, what we want to be concerned with is small business today, I think, is more important than ever before, because to open up a business, you've got to be creative. Right. To open up a business, you need to hire people, so they employ people. They start talking about, when they talk about, businesses sometimes will leave money in their company because they're not taxed at the same rate as when they pull the money out personally, and they're talking about eliminating some of that. So there's a lot of decisions that they're making that will have an impact in all business, but will have a severe impact on small business because they just don't have the margins.
Right.
Right. And that's what concerns me. I want to see more small businesses. I want to see more entrepreneurship. I want to see more innovation. I want to see more creation because that's what causes a society to move forward. And that's where the greatest creative ideas come from, whether it's Amazon or Facebook. These were creative ideas started by entrepreneurs that at one time were a small business.
And it does seem very sad that, something that could squash a small business, which could be an amazing innovator, and yet these huge companies, they are protected.
Yes.
And there is bailouts. And sometimes it's like, okay, but what are you guys doing for us right now?
Right.
How do you advise people who have an idea and are thinking about starting their business? What are the pieces they need to have in place in this kind of economy in order to have the best chance?
I think the small businesses today that are going to succeed at the highest level are ones that create extraordinary customer experiences. What I'm starting to see, think about Cineplex. Cineplex came out with a VIP theater. Mm-hmm. That's a customer experience. Think about Tim Hortons and Starbucks. Okay, both coffee, but one is a little more expensive than the other. So why do people pay more for Starbucks over Tim Hortons? Customer experience. And I was reading not long ago in a book that, they say that the future is going to be based on the customer experience. You go to a great restaurant, the food might be good, but it's a customer experience that changes the way you feel about that restaurant. And I think a lot of small businesses look at trying to compete on price. And I'm not a fan of competing on price. I'm a fan of competing on value. It is proven that 90% of people will pay more money for a better experience. And Starbucks has proven that. VIP at Cineplex has proven that. High-end restaurants have proven that. Expensive car, it doesn't matter where you go. People are willing to pay more. So I just caution business. First of all, make sure your idea is sound and it's really going to serve the public. It's not about making money. Okay, money's an exchange of value. Bring value to the marketplace, number one. Number two, don't focus just on competing on price because that's a zero-sum game. It's a downward spiral. Focus on delivering extreme value and then choose what you're going to charge for that value and be proud of what it is you do and stand for what it is you want to charge.
What an important distinction, value versus price, because you're absolutely right. I don't have a ton of money, but I will always go to the place that treats me better, that makes me feel good, and yes, if that place is also like, look, the thing we're giving you is a bit more expensive, but it's because we care more. Mm-hmm. I'll give you my money every time.
Every time. It's amazing. Human beings, it's sort of like have MFFI on somebody's forehead. Make me feel important. I hope I got that right. But anyway, make me feel important. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
And that's what, today it's about the experience because we can go online and buy almost anything.
Sure.
There's no great experience there other than maybe Amazon's one click to buy and make it easy. That is a customer experience. But I say what you have to do is you got to look at all the pain points, right, in any business. And where are the pain points? Uber, what pain points did they get rid of? Us having to dial a telephone, waiting for a cab that you hope's going to show up in 20 minutes and might be there in an hour.
Yeah.
That was a pain point. You get in the cab, we don't take credit cards. We just want cash. Pain point. Uber eliminated that. Now, there's controversy about Uber, obviously, but that doesn't matter. They eliminated a pain point. Airbnb today, the largest hotel in the world, and they don't own a property.
Yeah.
Think about that. They eliminated what? Pain points, right? So I look at a business and say what people are looking for today, I believe, is an experience. And the experience could be just a process being easier. Mm-hmm. Or the experience could be you make me feel really good when I show up. Yeah. And I want to keep coming back here because you make me feel good. And that's what great restaurants do. That's what Starbucks has done to a degree, opposed to, say, Tim Hortons, right?
Yeah.
Tim Hortons is, okay, we're going to give you a great product at a bit lower price, but it's going to be fast.
Yeah.
Starbucks is saying, hey, when you come in here, it's probably not going to be fast.
Yeah.
But guess what? We're going to smile. We're going to treat you well, and you can doctor up your own coffee the way you want it.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. So, Richard, I could talk to you forever, but we are sadly out of time. But I do want to tell everyone, of course, to go to richardrobbins.com. And they can also follow you on social media, on Twitter at Richard L. Robbins, or on Facebook, Richard Robbins. So interesting. And I find the whole coaching and business world so fascinating. So I hope we get to talk again someday. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Allison. Great to be here.